Hello everyone and welcome to the second webinar in our ERP Masterclass series. My name is Courtney Sinclair and I am the Marketing Coordinator here at Focus. This Masterclass series is comprised of live events and supporting content aimed at helping companies prepare for, find and buy ERP solutions. Today we have Heather and Renee from our Christchurch branch presenting the second webinar on how to successfully choose the right ERP software and partner. If you do have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A section during the webinar, and these will be answered at the end. We start off today's webinar with Renee doing a recap of webinar 1. Over to you, Renee.
Thanks, Courtney. During webinar 1, we discussed the 6 critical steps that we think will make an ERP selection and implementation a success. So we're just going to recap on those steps now. Step 1 was ensuring you are thinking long-term. Keep in mind that companies change. Investing in a system that meets your needs today may prevent you from growing in the future. Also bear in mind that this is not an IT project or a finance project, but it's a business project and it must be driven with the business benefits being the goal. Step 2, getting to really know your business. An ERP system isn't just a major investment, it's a catalyst for change. To create a positive environment for change, you need to take a thorough, honest look at how your business is performing. Are your profits stagnant or declining? Are your competitors getting ahead? Are your staff feeling motivated? And are you equipped for growth? Surveys tell us that managing growth expectations is one of the key challenges for mid-sized businesses. Step 3, get everyone on the bus. So getting the support of everyone in your company is critical. The staff will have their own perspective of how your business works and their input should be sought. By making the project transparent and showing them that you value their views, your staff will help to create that positive environment for change. Step 4, recognise the importance of setting up the right team to drive the project forward. If the team is too big, decisions are not made and the project can become cumbersome. If the team is too small, there's the potential for key elements to be missed. Step 5, evaluate your needs. Make sure you have a clear picture of why you need an ERP system. Understand what you're wanting to achieve and then figure out what are the must-haves versus what are the nice-to-haves. And lastly, step 6, preparing for the demo. Make sure you put yourself in a position to get the most out of the presentation. So, in webinar 1, we ran a prize draw on what these 6 critical steps were, and we asked the attendees to enter these into the Q&A at the end. And our winner was Jasmine Robertson, who I think is with us today. So, hello, Jasmine. I had the pleasure of meeting you. I came out to your office and dropped off a nice bottle of bubbles, so I hope you got to enjoy that. If you've missed webinar 1, want to catch it up or need a refresher, want to pass it on to a colleague or a client, then the link is up on our website. The website's down the bottom left corner. So, as with any project, it pays to have the foundations in place and the preparation work done so you can now set yourself up for a successful project. So, forward to today and what we'll be covering off in webinar 2. Now that the foundation work has been done, it's time to start looking at the following. The people who will assist you with the implementation of the software, the systems that you will meet the requirements you have outlined, and then prepare for the demo. Now, who better to explain this process than our account manager, Heather Jones? So while Heather and I were putting this webinar together, a point Heather made was that from her sales point of view, there are 10 key points that she would potentially like ERP clients to be able to answer when she first starts talking to them. So I thought, let's do another prize draw on what these key points are. Heather will identify them to you throughout the rest of the webinar, so listen out, get pen and paper ready, and just like in webinar 1, we will let you know when to enter them into the Q&A panel at the end. Okay, on that note, over to you, Heather.
Thanks, Renee, and hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. For anyone not familiar with me, I'm the account manager at Focus and have been an ERP software consultant for the past 10 years, 4 of those with Focus. So with my background, I can really talk from experience when explaining the key role of the vendor partner in the overall ERP implementation process. Now, when I say partner, in the case of ERP, that would be ourselves, Focus Technology Group, as we are the vendor partner to the ERP software provider. And at Focus, we work with the software vendor MYOB's ERP software exclusively. With ERP software, you will be most likely dealing with one of the ERP partners' vendor partners, rather than the ERP vendor itself. And that's because ERP software is configurable software, and it needs the expertise that a vendor partner such as Focus offers.
So you just mentioned configurable software here. That's really the key difference, isn't it, between an ERP software system and an accounting or a bookkeeping software. So to get the most out of an ERP solution, it is really important to understand that concept. Can you just explain this in a bit more detail for us?
Absolutely. I can guarantee that no two ERP implementations will be the same, and that simply is no two businesses are the same. No matter how similar they may be, there are always subtle differences to process flows, reporting requirements, and their future plans. And of course, the people are unique as well, and we all like to do things our own specific ways. So with configurable software, you can tailor it to meet your own unique needs. And a key feature to the ERP software is that you don't fit your processes to a fixed way of doing something. Instead, you configure your software to meet your own needs and how you like to work. So each installation will always be unique, irrespective of the underlying software. We can use an analogy of houses as an example. A bit like the difference between buying a spec house or consulting with an architect to build a custom designed house, a basic accounting or bookkeeping software package like AccountWrite, Xero or Reckon are a wee bit like the spec house. It's very much a what you see is what you get sort of deal. There's no real scope for customizing or adapting it to suit your needs. You know, it's going to have 3 bedrooms, it's always going to have 3 bedrooms. So initially you'll adapt yourself and your life to fit that size, but eventually it becomes a limitation and you just simply outgrow it. ERP software, on the other hand, is more like the architecturally designed house. An ERP vendor like MYOB will provide the building materials that go into the construction of the house, but it's the vendor partner such as Focus who will architect it and then build your home, designing it to fit your needs and requirements both now and in the future, and they'll design it adhering to the best practice. So it's very important at this stage to understand that a partner needs to be involved when you're evaluating any ERP system.
Thanks, Heather. That's a great analogy and explains the difference really well. In my experience, I regularly hear people being confused about the difference between configuration and customization. Can you explain the difference between those terms for us?
Sure. Configuration involves adapting elements that are already available within the software, whereas customization involves adding elements to that software. Okay, so if we just focus on configuration, one of the questions that I received during the pre-sales process quite often is, as a customer, can I do the configuration work myself? Can I read the manual? Can I watch some YouTube videos? What are your thoughts on that? Well, basically the answer there is a flat no. There's a lot of moving parts within an ERP system, and you really do need the assistance of a qualified partner to make sure it's set up and supported correctly. With most ERP systems, consultants have to go through extensive training and certification courses before they're able to implement a solution. They are also required to keep themselves up to date with changes in the software, which, as I know from experience, is really hard to do when the software is changing so fast. So whilst a customer who can more or less teach themselves how to use AccountWrite or Xero by watching YouTube videos, and they might be hopeful they can do the same when it comes to a new ERP system, it's just not possible. They really must engage with the partner, and they cannot buy directly from the vendor.
Okay, so if we take it as a given that configuring, installing and supporting an ERP system requires specialist skills, why is it that the ERP vendor doesn't provide those services themselves?
Well, in the very big systems in Tier 1, such as SAP and Oracle, those types of companies will offer professional services in addition to the software. But in the mid-market, Tiers 2 and 3, which is where the majority of businesses sit that require the ERP solutions that we're looking at, then the actual installation work will almost exclusively be done by a partner. And the partner will have the industry experience. So whilst they maintain client confidentiality, it really does help when the partner already has an understanding in general of what typical business processes are for you and where the efficiency gains are most likely to be made in your industry. I'll explain a little more about these tiers in a moment.
Okay, so they're all good points, and I suppose another one to make is that partners, not only do they have industry expertise, but they also tend to be small to medium-sized businesses themselves, exactly like the customers they're serving. So from a business perspective, they're going through exactly the same day-to-day frustrations that their prospects are facing. So it'll be easier for them to have a peer-to-peer conversation and relate directly to those business challenges. But let's expand a little bit on that. So aside from being of a similar size to the customers that they serve, what does a typical ERP partner tend to look like, and how have they started out?
Well, most ERP partners have started out as accounting practices and maybe still are, and that's as fundamentally you need to understand accounting principles as part of the overall design, implementation and support of an ERP system. This is the slide which might get me shot by our CEO because it makes him feel old. But in the case of Focus, our CEO, Rod Sinclair, was working as a chartered accountant, helping clients in the early 90s move from manual systems to computerized systems, or from smaller to bigger systems. And as they hit the limitations of that business software, he saw a real need for the expertise he could offer in this transition, and he formed Focus.
Okay. So we've established that if you're going to seriously evaluate an ERP system, then you will need to engage with a partner, that these partners will invariably be ERP specialists, and that they will have expertise within a given industry. Beyond those services, Heather, is there anything else a partner can provide?
Well, I can break my answer down here into two components. Firstly, there's the business as usual aspect, and to which some extent we've already touched on when I mentioned that the ERP partner will architect the system for you. They will install it and they'll ensure its continued smooth running. Secondly, the biggest value add from your ERP partner can be made by using them as your trusted business advisor. And if enabled, they can continue to bring further productivity benefits to your business. As they get to know your business and team, they can offer solutions that match the capabilities of the software to your needs and your desired business outcomes.
Well, I can't agree with you more, Heather. The happiest ERP customers tend to be those that do take on their partner as a trusted advisor. I've had clients that I've been dealing with for the last 10 years, and I have still to this day make contact with them and help evolve their business. And I think we pointed that out in the last webinar as well. When you look upon your system as a dynamic tool to bring about increased productivity rather than just looking at a static accounting system. So I guess the next question is, how can a customer find these partners?
Well, generally, it's one of two ways, Renee. A customer could find a partner via that partner's own marketing effort or on a recommendation, perhaps. But probably the more structured approach is to first identify what ERP packages are the most likely, best fit for your organisation, and then identify the partners that work with that particular ERP vendor.
Okay, so when you're looking to find the software that's the best fit for your business, where would you start?
Well, within the industry, we refer to the 4 tiers, and as you progress from tier 4 or the lower tier through to tier 1, the ERP systems become more comprehensive and more costly. Tier 4 systems like MYB AccountRight and Xero aren't ERP systems. That's really important to keep in mind. They are accounting software packages, but when you look at tiers 3 through to 1, these are all ERP systems. So initially, you can use your turnover as a bit of a guide to where you might fit into these tiers. And secondly, the number of staff who would access and use the system can be included as a bit of a guideline. The slide displayed here is not an exhaustive list of all the systems available, but it does give you an idea of what the better known systems are and where they sit in terms of their functionality and price. I should point out that there aren't hard boundaries between these tiers. You'll have some larger companies that can get by with the lower tier software because their needs aren't that complex, and then you'll have smaller companies who opt for the higher tier software because they want to give themselves a platform for growth, or perhaps they have specific needs that mean the basic Xero and AccountRight accounting packages are just not suitable. Really, I think the sort of software a company will need is going to depend on how complex their needs are, but nonetheless, turnover and employee size numbers will give you a reasonable idea of what sort of market the different ERP packages cater to.
Okay, great. So once you decided which ERP vendor may be the best fit, then you will go to the vendor's website, find a partner listing and then make contact. Would that be right?
Yes, absolutely. If you call the ERP vendor, they're most likely going to run through some simple questions with you, such as turnover, number of employees, locations that you are in, the existing software you use and pain points you might be having, what's driven you to make this call, and they'll get your contact details. They'll then select the best fit partner based on the details that you've provided and pass those on. Or alternatively, if you already have a preferred partner in mind, and either for your own business or for a client's business, you want to recommend that they get in contact, for both cases, then that's where the team at Focus come in.
Okay, so I hope everybody has their pen and paper ready, because coming up are the 10 questions that will be asked of the client in the first initial conversation. So these are the 10 for the prize draw. Okay, Heather, so how does that first conversation start?
Well, it's a fairly big conversation, Renee, and it was quite hard for me to actually summarise it down here for the purposes of today. But once we've coordinated a suitable time to chat, it's going to be best to set aside probably half to an hour for this first call. Once I've introduced myself and Focus, I do need to cover off the following key points in reasonable detail to gain an understanding of some key areas of your business. So firstly, what is your business's current situation? I'll ask you for a brief overview of your business, what the industry it is in, the geographical locations, turnover, number of employees, and a little bit about who you are and what you do. We'll then need to cover what your current systems are, how many people are using those systems, what the system actually is, or systems. Usually people are using a whole variety of disparate systems, and what are they currently doing for you? Which of course leads into number 3 in the list here, the problems and pains of your current situation. What would you like to improve on over now and over time? What are your real pain points and challenges? How much time do you waste that you could have avoided with a fully featured modern solution? Really, what is driving you here to make this change? Then we might talk about your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves. Quite an important difference for me to understand here. So what are your most important needs from a system? What is absolutely critical versus what is simply nice to have? A big one to talk about is your budget. And it has to be asked here, what sort of budget has been set aside for the new solution? Do you have a ballpark in mind? Have you assessed the cost of not making a change, and perhaps the cost associated with inefficiencies that you might have identified? And have you really assessed the cost of making no change? The vision for your future is important. What are your expectations of this new system? Is it going to magically solve everything? What will you be able to achieve with it? And what is your roadmap? Is this system going to be fitting in immediately? Did you need it 2 years ago? Do you just need something coming up in a couple of years? Your time frame, again, really important to establish. What is the priority on this for your business? When is a busy time for you? Are you expecting this to be done in 1 week? Or are you expecting something, that's going to take 3 or 4 months? What availability have your staff got to learn the new system? And how are you planning on making some time available for them? Establishing the key people involved in the decision-making process is important for me. So who are those people? Have you actually included them? What is your buying process? And, as we mentioned in webinar 1, are all of your team on the bus with this? Or do you need to provide a recommendation to perhaps a board or convince a key stakeholder to invest in this solution? The deployment is something to cover, even in this early first call. Do you have a requirement for cloud or on-premise? Do you have high-speed internet? It's incredible how many people I talk to who say, hey, I want the latest, greatest cloud-based software, yet they don't have high-speed internet. So it's quite important to touch on this point early in the conversation. Have you got on-premise IT and infrastructure, or is that something that also needs updating as part of this overall decision? And finally, what are the other integration requirements? Do you have any other software, such as a website perhaps, freight providers, anything else that is critical to the solution working for you, you need to bring up and we need just to touch on so I have an understanding. So there is quite a bit to get through, but they are really all key points that hopefully you've got a bit of an idea about before we start talking. And when we finish our conversation, I will then have been able to formulate an idea of if your business is a good fit for either of the ERP solutions that we offer, and also if you're a good fit for our company, Focus. And I can really establish this and inform you quite quickly, which is going to save us both time. If we assume that it is the case that I believe we have a solution for you and you sort of seem to like the sound of us, then I'll follow up with an email and some relevant online collateral for you to get an initial feel for our capabilities as a partner and that of the relevant software, which in the case of Focus is MYOB's Advanced and MYOB's Exo Business.
Wow, Heather, that is a big conversation. It's a lot for people to know. But I suppose if they follow the prep that we talked about on webinar 1, then a lot of those steps would flesh out the answers to the questions that you require. Okay, so we now have an idea of the ERP vendor and their solutions, and we've identified a partner who's a good fit, and we're now ready to start evaluating the software. What would we expect the next step to be?
Well, basically, it's absolutely not the demo, which is often where these first conversations start. And the first point of contact is, hey, I want an ERP system, I want to see a demo. And this is one of the reasons we're doing this series, is to try and educate people on all of the things that have to happen first before we get to that demo stage, what we really need to discuss and sort out. So the first step really here is the business will have reviewed the information that's been provided, and we'll usually have a second discussion, often at the business site, to really work through the key business requirements in more detail and establish and agree the value associated with the current pains or limitations. The vendor partner can then put together an indicative proposal, having ensured the software capabilities match the business requirements. Maybe they've liaised with any third-party software vendors around integration requirements, and we can outline the next steps in the process. This stage is really important to ensure that the partner understands the business needs and the desired outcomes, that you have the confidence in the partner as being a good fit for your company, and that you are able to clearly calculate the return on investment. At this stage, you may still not have defined the software solution, but one might be standing out as being the most suitable. So again, this in itself is one of the reasons not to launch into a demo at the very first stage of an evaluation. There really is a lot to establish first.
Okay, so Heather, we spent a bit of time talking about the software vendors such as MYOB and the software partners such as Focus, but the key to the project's success is ultimately the software choice. What would be some of your chief considerations when evaluating a software package?
Well, evaluating and looking at software packages can be quite time consuming and daunting. So I would suggest having your key requirements clearly in mind and ensure you've communicated those to the partner you're talking with. One of the key aspects to the software evaluation is in the demonstration. I have been involved in many of these over the years, and I can give you some insights into this process. Firstly, just need to consider there's no hard and fast rule as to how many demonstrations should be done or how long they should be. I've been involved in some where I've barely clicked on a single screen, and instead we've spent a good deal of time talking about the company and their business needs and the software capabilities. And then I've been in demos that have lasted multiple days and been structured for separate teams within a business, such as finance or sales and distribution. And so it really just comes down to the complexity of the business as to what is required in a software demonstration. I can probably say if I was sitting on the other side of the fence evaluating an ERP package, I'd recommend the following three-step approach. So the first is I would have done some research. Practically this means I've read some collateral, watched some intro videos, and I've looked at both the partner and the vendor's websites. The second is I will have established what my key requirements are, and I might ask the partner to demonstrate those specifically to gain some confidence in the software and the partner, or we might just discuss the software capabilities around these. And it's at this stage that the partner will be giving us this initial generic software demonstration. The third step, and this might or might not be necessary, is perhaps we do a deep dive into some very specific requirement and scenario that we have. And this might mean a paid engagement with the partner if they need to show us a proof of concept of some particularly time-consuming configuration that they have to build into a demo in order to satisfy us that the software can meet our requirements.
Okay, you just mentioned before, Heather, about a generic demonstration. Can you just elaborate what a generic would entail, please?
Well, it's really important, Renee, to understand the ERP software is very sophisticated and it has a lot of components. So a generic demo is going to show you the overall software, give you an idea of the look and feel of it and some of the components that might be relevant to your industry, usually using demo data, widgets and gadgets, but it's not going to be using your data, it's not going to have your information in it. And the processes will be fairly standard business practice processes. They might not be what you require. But still, you're going to be able to have an idea around the basic capabilities of it and be able to decide if you like what you're seeing.
So I guess I can confirm what you said earlier on the 3 steps is not a strict requirement. So I've also sat in meetings where the customer was satisfied that the software could meet their needs after just one demonstration, and they're still a client to this day. But I would agree that for larger opportunities, then that deep dive proof of concept can be required at times. Heather, just while we're on the subject of demos, I think it's probably worthwhile to set expectations as to what can be demoed on the fly.
Absolutely. One of the comments you might hear in a demo is that the partner's going to say, yes, the software can do that, but it does need to be configured differently and I need to change some setting in order to show you that, or something along those lines. And these comments can talk directly to the point that we've discussed earlier, is that ERP solutions can be configured to work in different ways, but those configuration changes are not necessarily something that can be done quickly and on the fly. So there's many reasons really here where you don't necessarily see the partner make an immediate change for you to show you something. Other times they might just be able to flick into a configuration screen, click a couple of things, and away you go again.
Okay, Heather, I know software's always been worked on by its developers with an aim to make it better and to add functionality, and most software companies will usually have some sort of roadmap. To what extent should prospects who are considering an ERP system be persuaded by that roadmap?
Well, a comment that you might hear is that the software doesn't do that right now, but it is on the product roadmap. I can say we do say that. We are software developers and we have our own product roadmap, but essentially it's really important to ensure that the product you're looking at has a roadmap to start with. That's going to indicate the product has a future, but you really shouldn't be looking to purchase software based on this roadmap, especially if the item you're waiting on is critical to your business. There are times when vendors will give commitments for a feature delivery, but as a general principle, you should buy based on the current available functionality rather than on roadmap delivery.
Okay, thanks for that. So we've talked about the demo and we've talked about the roadmap. What are some of the other main items a customer should be looking at when evaluating software?
Well, integration requirements, or as you might more commonly know about that as being an add-on perhaps, into the software is a really important fact to consider, and ideally will have been mentioned at the first contact. If it is a key requirement, then this will need some more discussion to ensure that the relevant costs of that integration is considered, and often some liaison between the other software vendor and the partner will be required, and the business might have to facilitate that.
Okay, so just to change tack completely, there's currently a lot of talk around cloud. Can you tell us how that impacts on an ERP selection?
Absolutely, I could talk about it for hours. But to start with, when we're talking about cloud, we're essentially getting into how the software is deployed and where, and to an extent, how the software is paid for. So your options are usually dependent on the software itself, and these can be on-premise on a local server, which I think is fairly explanatory, self-explanatory for most of you. It's hardware that you will have, hopefully relatively up-to-date if you're considering putting an ERP software solution on it. A different option could be hosted in a multi-tenant cloud environment. So that can be a cost-effective option to consider, and it's where you're essentially renting space on someone else's server. Generally, that's charged on a monthly basis, and it can offer the hybrid benefits of having some infrastructure locally on-premise, but having your ERP software on a safe and secure server, which is still accessible from anywhere, but utilizes the benefits of cloud technology. If the multi-tenant option isn't suitable for one reason or another, but you still want your software in the cloud, then having your servers completely cloud hosted is another option. And this is known as infrastructure as a service. You still buy the servers, but they sit on a cloud provider's site and are maintained by the third-party provider. And finally, some software is pure cloud, so neither of those first two options are available to you. You don't get any choice on the deployment. It's usually charged as a monthly subscription, which is referred to as software as a service. Upgrades are done behind the scenes as are backups, and the cloud environment is maintained for you with high levels of stability and availability. And that's all encompassed in the monthly fee that you pay, which is usually per user. Cloud software requires high-speed internet access, and you've got to factor that in.
Great, Heather, thanks. That explains the 3 different ways of deployment really well. Okay, so to summarise on what we've been talking about today, I would say there are 2 major decisions that need to be made in an ERP evaluation. Which partner are you going to choose to help you implement it, and which software are you going to use? The software choice will basically come down to the package that delivers the majority of functionality at the price point you can afford. So functionality has to be your foremost concern, not the user interface and not whether the software is in the cloud or hosted. Partner choice will primarily be determined by how comfortable you feel with them. Do you think that they understand your business and what you're trying to achieve? Can they produce items of proof, such as case studies or reference customers? Do they have enough experience with the software to configure it in such a way to help you achieve your desired outcomes? Heather, are there any final comments you'd like to make?
Yes. I think I'd just like to emphasise the importance of finding a partner that you like, that you can work with and trust. Partners have a vast amount of knowledge and can be a really valuable asset to your business. From a product and process perspective, you need to have defined your requirements, evaluated the solutions available, considered the partner who supports the solution, and then, of course, you make your decision. This is your commitment to purchase. So you might make this right at this point, or in some cases, you might find merit in engaging with a partner to produce a statement of work to determine the key deliverables at go live. And this might help you gain a more accurate indication of cost. Again, it is a partnership, and both parties do need to clearly identify and agree on who is doing what and when. So I think that will bring us to the end of webinar 2 of how to successfully choose the right ERP software and partner. I hope we've shed some light on this process for you. Now's the time to enter those first 10 call questions into the Q&A panel for the prize draw. A quick summary will be fine, not the detailed blurb that I did. And we'll draw the winner once the webinar has finished and notify them by email. So good luck, and I hope to be talking with some of you in the future about your ERP requirements. Thanks very much. Back to you, Courtney.
Thanks, Heather and Renee. So the next webinar is going to be on how to implement and get value out of your ERP system. So just while we're waiting on everyone to enter in their 10 first call questions, if you do have any questions that have come up throughout the webinar, you can either pop them in to the Q&A right now, or you can email Heather or give her a call and she'll be able to answer those for you. So we'll just give a few minutes to enter in your 10 first call questions. Okay, well, thanks everyone for entering in your 10 first call questions. So we'll keep that open for a little while longer after the webinar is closed, just in case you are a wee bit of a slow typer, but that's okay. So thanks to everyone for attending the second webinar in the series, and we do look forward to seeing you all at the next one.